Well, everybody. Hey, machine. Hey, I'm TBK. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome back. You know who it is. And we got our live shoe going on. Just want to say welcome. Come on in. Kick your feet back. Get your keyboard ready. Get your questions out. Get everything all secure. Make sure you got your drink and snacks. I got mine, by the way. We're going to do something different. Today, what we're going to be doing is what I tried to do last week and go into the BIOS of my extra computer, and I'm going to show you what I did. I'm kind of bypassing a little bit of something, so I kind of took one of these and tried to put the BIOS on this, the updated BIOS, and it didn't work. And I thought to myself, what did I do the last time that made it a little bit more spectacular? So, finding out that there's a couple things I had to do, and that means I had to download all the BIOSes that I missed for that motherboard. And I got to do them one by one. So, from the last BIOS you left off, you go up to the next update, then the next update, then the next update. So, let's kick it on. And let's go to the screen. And now we're in the BIOS. Okay, so what you're going to want to do, I'll show you guys what I did in a minute. You go to the advanced section, and then you go to tools. This is if you got access to Windows, this would be good for you. So you go to the flash update utility, and then here is my C drive, the hard drive. So I decided to put everything on the hard drive, all the BIOSes. That gave me a little bit more advantage. Let me move you guys up over here and so I can expand this a little bit more. All right. So the BIOS I got in now is 4401. That would be right here. I made all new folders, and I put each BIOS, and I've already used the BIOS renamer on all of it, and I put folders for each one. So I got 4401. Now I go to 4402. Click on that, and here's the BIOS. So I click on that, hit yes, read the file, and then hit yes. Okay, the reason why I'm doing it like this is because the last BIOS was in 2023. Now, I tried to put the 4600 BIOS in here, and I had a problem. I couldn't get the BIOS in because it wasn't recognizing that file because it was a 2023 file. So now I'm updating it to 2024, so that way it'll be able to read that file. So you got to do them one by one. And I know that kind of sucks, but somebody asked me how you can do it. And after I get done with this BIOS, I'll take you into Windows. And remember, keep your BIOS stock until you're done updating your BIOS, and then go in and make your modifications. Don't do it every time, because you'll drive yourself crazy. Just keep it stock until you get all your BIOSes finished and get up to date before you go and make your modifications. That's something I didn't do, and I tried to boot into Windows and it kept bringing me back to the BIOS page. That's because it doesn't read those settings that you had previously. So whatever previous settings you had, it's not going to read it. So hopefully you remember all the settings you did before you update your BIOS, and then you can go back in there and boom, 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 you're done. So it's not hard. It's very simple. Now, if you can't do it this way, then you're resorted to this, the SD card. Because there will be on the back plate for the motherboard where you plug in this SD card in. You plug it in, and then it'll have a BIOS button. Then you hold that down until it starts flashing, and then when it's done, don't touch nothing until it's done, until it stops flashing. Okay. So let's see if the BIOS is going to give me any issues. And remember, it's gonna cycle. It's gonna cycle a couple times before it kicks back in and goes forward. Right now it's cycling. So let's keep on cycling. See, because every time you update your BIOS, it resets everything that's in there. It puts everything back to stock. And if it doesn't, then you got to go in there and fix that. See, like this right here tells me I need to go to hit F1. So I hit F1. And then I go to the advanced mode. I'll go into the exit, and I'll hit load optimize defaults and hit OK. And then save and exit. I never did update all BIOS versions, but skipped all the outdated stuff instead. Well, this is the thing. When you're overwriting a previous BIOS, there are some things that it'll overwrite and some things it won't overwrite. So, and the things it doesn't overwrite is the things that the BIOS is going to need to continue an update. So I go one by one. So this way I know that I'm going each level. So what you can do, if you're wondering, let me flip it over here, is you go into your C drive. Okay, you'll see in your C drive, or whatever your main drive is for your operating system, you'll see I put folders. all the BIOS folders right here on top, not inside of a folder, right into the C drive itself. And I put all the files, all the BIOS files right here. So basically they're all there, one by one. And then after you get them all updated into the motherboard BIOS, then what you can do is you could either save these, which it's not going to matter because you're not able to go backwards with your BIOS. That is safe, not to go backwards. So each BIOS, when you get all the way down to the last one and you put the last one in, then you can come back into Windows and you can take all these out and just delete them. All the BIOSes that you added in, you can delete off of your Windows. You don't really need them after that. So, and if you do need a BIOS, then you can go back and re-download it again. It's simple. So, I made a folder. I took the folder I downloaded, I put it inside that folder, I extracted it right there into that folder, and then inside that folder, I put and renamed that file, and then took and put it right there as a subfolder. Instead of it being in a folder into a folder into a folder, you got to put it in as a subfolder. Basically, inside inside your folder, I'll show you again. I'll use this as an example. See, you got your folder right here that you took and you extracted it to this folder. So, but you want it outside of that folder. You want it right here by itself inside the main folder. See, this is your main folder right here. Okay, so you want it right here into the main folder. And once that's done, and you get it all said and done, then you can go and you can shut down. This is Windows 10, by the way. It's not Windows 11. You can hit restart. Wait for it to restart. Hit the delete key. This is an Asus motherboard, so you can hit F2 or the delete key. Just keep tapping it until the screen changes. Alrighty. Now you can go back to the advanced mode, or you can click on easy mode. It'll show you right here what the BIOS version is, 4402. Go to the advanced mode, go to your tools, go to your easy flash, go to your C drive, which is FS1. Your BIOS version right now is 4402. Go below that and go to 4410. And this is 4410. Click on that. Click yes. Read file. There it is. Click yes. And then proceed to update the BIOS. So, I showed you how you can build the folders right into the C drive. And I showed you that you can take them and put them right from the C drive to your BIOS update without using an SD card. It's a faster way than you putting it on an SD card. If you go look and somebody shows you how to update the BIOS from different reviewers, they're going to show you different ways. I'm just going to show you the fast way. If your computer has access to Windows and you set it out on your C drive in Windows and put it into folders and you name each folder, then you're not going to have a problem. I named them my BIOS version. Each folder I name them the BIOS version. So that way I can click on that folder and I know what it is. That's the smart way of doing things. So basically, don't touch anything, don't do anything. Let the computer restart itself and it'll go back into that fault. You just keep doing it until you get it all caught up. Now, when it comes to the beta versions, do not put the beta versions in. Wait until they put a final version out. I never put a beta version in, no matter what it says. Because a lot of people ran into that problem. If you remember, they had an Asus motherboard, and you noticed that, the 7900 X3D caught fire. I think that was Gamer's Nexus. And the reason why is, guess what? Is because they didn't do the BIOS right. That's why it caught fire. So, it's common sense. Doing computers is all common sense. Now, in order for you to keep up to date, this is what you got to do. Don't touch anything when it says okay. Just let it, it'll roll itself. That's basically how it does. It'll roll itself. After you started the update, don't touch your keyboard, don't touch your mouse, don't touch nothing. Just make sure that you don't lose any power during this transition. If you lose power during the BIOS update, 9 out of 10 chances you might not be able to recover the BIOS on the motherboard from that. And then you got to send it out to somebody else to have them pull the chip, have them update the BIOS, and then put the chip back on the motherboard and then send it back to you. But just because, you have that little hiccup with your BIOS doesn't mean your motherboard's trashed. Does not mean your motherboard is trashed. It can be fixed. Hit F1. See, now I can avoid one step out of this. Okay, so basically I can go right to the tools. I can go right up to the easy update utility. Since I know the BIOS updated to 4410, click that, and now I can go to 4604. That's the one I tried to put in the first time, but the motherboard wouldn't, it said it wouldn't let me. So let's see if it does now. If not, then it's got to be something on Asus's part. We'll find out. Yay. It allowed it. There we go. Click yes. Don't touch nothing. And then my B450 motherboard, my Asus B450 motherboard, will be up to date on the BIOS. So I don't have to worry about it for probably another 2 months, 3 months until I got to do this again. I mean, what do you all think? I mean, leave your comments. It's live chat. Leave your comments. Let me know what you think. I'm showing you the easiest route to do this. There's one step that's, if you got a motherboard that has BIOS flashback that's built onto the motherboard itself, then you can, do the SD card thing. But me, I'm showing you guys how I'm updating it, and I'm doing it one by one. Just going up to the latest BIOS doesn't mean you probably get everything. I step by step. I know some people just want to be done with it one time and boom. I know I had to do it 5 or 6 times, but at least I know step by step it's going in. The motherboard is satisfied with the BIOS that's going in. Now, if it's the wrong BIOS, ASUS motherboard will not let you update the BIOS. It will say this is the wrong BIOS. It's the wrong file. So you're safe with that. Yeah, I can save an USB stick as it seems. I learned something today. Well, that's what it's about. That's why we're all here is, share ideas and better, faster way to do things, That's what it's all about. I'm just showing you because somebody asked me, can you show me how to update? Somebody mailed me and said, hey man, can you show me how to update? And I said, yeah, I'll do it next week on the live stream. So that way you'll see that it's very simple. It's not hard. As long as what you download has to be precise. The precise motherboard. It has to be the precise numbers. I mean, you can't miss on that. Now MSI, I'm not too familiar with their BIOS, but I heard it's almost similar to ASUS. Gigabyte, they're very finicky, and NZXT is very finicky, and ASRock's very finicky. So, but it's not hard. It's very simple, very simple. That's why, I take you guys through this when I'm doing something, I'm taking you through this to show you how easy it is. I know you get reviewers out there that'll say to you, be very careful and shake you up to the core and tell you, be very careful. You do this wrong, boom. You lose your whole motherboard. There's no coming back from it. That's not true. And I'm going to say that. That is not true. There is a way you can come back from it. But you'll have to send it to a technician to have them reflash the BIOS onto the motherboard and update it for you and then send it back. Might cost you a couple bucks, but look at it this way. If you buy a $400 motherboard and it only costs you $50 in shipping to get it fixed, let's say total it cost you $100 to get it fixed, that just saved you a ton of money. So think about it. That's the thing you want to, that's the kind of thing you want to have in your corner. F1, so we hit the F1 key. And then we go back into the BIOS again. So we'll go into advanced mode. We will hit exit. We will load optimize defaults. Click OK, and then we'll hit save changes and exit. And then we'll go into Windows. So after you get back, so you want to make sure your motherboard is coordinating with your solid state drive, your SSD drive. You want to make sure they're collaborating at a stock setting. So once you got that collaboration and you can get back into Windows after all your BIOS updates are done, then you can go back into the BIOS and then put your little tweaks and peaks in there. So as long as you know you can get back onto Windows, you'll know that the BIOS update was a success. That's the whole thing. You want to make sure it was a success. Not a failure, a success. Yay. So, as you can see, it was successful. As you can see, boom, it's done. So, now we got past that part. Now you guys can see it's working just fine. So, updating, I got another video on updating, so I don't need to show you guys twice on the updating. So we'll shut it down. We know it's done under the sun. Okay, a little bit of flashback to the past. Okay, so any questions or anything on about how the BIOS works? Knowing that you can take and put all the BIOSes that you need to do all your updating right onto the C drive of what your operating system's on. And then once all your updates are done, you can go back in where you put the BIOSes in on the C drive and delete them. Because you're not going to need them after that. Because you're not going to be able to step back the BIOS once you install it on an ASUS motherboard. Not sure about MSI or the rest of them. But with ASUS, they said once it's done, it's done. Once you put the BIOS in, it's done. Not unless you have a tool to flash the BIOS manually. There's a tool that, just if you can't do it, we understand. There are people that can update the BIOS for you. Go that route. If you're unsure, then go that route. But if what you've seen that takes a couple minutes, that's the best way to go. So, me, I'd rather do it myself so I can learn. Since I already learned, I already know how to do it. So it's you guys seen I can do it. So I already know how to do it. I had some people ask me, how come you don't do PC work for other people? Well, I used to. And it got to the point where, somebody would break something normal, usual. And what would happen is they would bring it back and say, well, it's not working. And usually it's because somebody sticks in a program that their computer's not designed for. And what happens is it either phases out the GPU, or it locks down the CPU to where, this is way back in the day. This is like Windows 95, Windows 98. And XP, and me, and Windows 7. So, back in those days, it was a little different on programming. Some people thought they were sure they knew what was in their hardware was in their system, because the way Microsoft had it, when you play games, you have to make sure that it meets the specifications of what your system is or greater. It's just a lot of hash and trash. But moving on down the road, guys, I got something else. Something else I want to talk to y'all about today. I rolled on TechSpot. I pulled up their benchmarks for the 9800X3D. I figured we can talk about that because that'll be another fun thing for us to talk about. And on top of that, I'm going to bundle it all in with the 14900K, 7950X3D, 9700X, 7800X3D, 5800X3D, 7600X, 7700X, 9950X, and the 285K. So let's get to it and see what I got cooking. Alrighty. Oh, you guys are going to be mad at me because I know the last time I forgot the big mouse cursor. I know you guys will be cursing me out about the cursor. So let's blow it up. Let's make it big so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Okay, 285K on Cinebench 2024. Higher is better. This is multi-core. This is a multi-core test with the 285K at 2523, beating out the 9950X 2345 and the 14900K at 2209 and the 7950X at 2201 and the 7950X3D at 2119, and looking at the 12900K at 1584. But whoa, here's the 9800X3D sitting at 1384. Big mouse cursor, huh? Yeah. So, as you guys can see, Cinebench is not going to run the 9800X3D to its, potential, because it's more of a gaming CPU than it is a workload GPU, I think. So, it's kind of iffy. So, moving on from here, let's go to single core. 9800X3D is at 135 points. Looking at the 285 being at 150 points, that's not too far off. That's probably about maybe, 8-9%. That's not bad in between. So, still 9950X at 141 points, not too bad. Moving on, EPS rails. Let's see what we got. 7800X3D at 83 wattages. So this says measured in watts. Lower is better. And this is for Cinebench multi-core. So looking at the 7800X3D at 83 watts, 5800X3D at 90 watts, 9700X at 95 watts, right along with the 9600X, 7600X at 114 watts, 9800X3D at 128 watts, and the 7700X, which machine has, 138 watts, which, you guys have to understand, you can undervolt and get this cut in about half. I bet you if you undervolted, you probably can cut that down to about 88 watts to about, let's say the max 105 watts. 105. That would put it right between the 7600X and the 9600X. But seeing the 5800X3D is 90 watts and the 7800X3D is 83 watts, then you probably can get it down to 80 watts on the PPT. So it is something to think about. And the 9800X3D with PBO on 154 watts. That means it's clocked upwards. But looking at the rest of it, the 285K at 258 watts, I don't know where Intel got to say that, that power savings on their processor was golden. I don't know what y'all think. I don't think it's golden. I really don't. 9950X, I can see it being 229 watts. And the 14900K at 309 watts. So it's not that, the 285K and the 14900K is not too far off from each other. So it's not looking good for, it's looking really better for the 9800X3D, but it looks really good for the 7800X3D. But remember, the 7800X3D is going to be limited because the V cache is stacked on top and not underneath. Now, the advantage with the 9800X3D is the V cache is stacked underneath. So the heating issue is going to be going through the IHS and the cores, the CCDs. It goes from the CCDs out through the IHS. Now, having that V cache on the bottom means you can pump it up a little bit higher if you wanted to and get a little bit more performance. And you can also too lower your PPT. Like I said, you can lower it down to 80 watts if you wanted to and keep it right in between these two, the 7800X3D and the 5800X3D. Me, I got mine set at 88 watts on my 5700X. That's the max PPT. So, moving on down the road. 7-zip file. Let's see. 9800X3Ds at 138. 7950X3Ds at 205. But it looks like the 7950X3D is kind of like a powerhouse. The 7950X looks like it's at 205. So between the 3D and the X, not too bad. The 285Ks at 203, 14900Ks at 202, 9950X is at 191. And then you got yada 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 below that. Well, moving on. Decompression. Let's see. This was compression, by the way. This is decompression. Looks like it's at 146. Right there, the same as compression. So, moving on. Let's see. Blender open data. Monster test. Samples per minute. Looks like it's at 152. Huh. Not too bad. But still, the 12900K is kind of above that. But guys, understand about the 12900K. It's going to be like the 7950X, the 9950X, and the 14900K. The 12900K is going to be like the X version, like the 9700X. It's going to be an X version. The X3D version is a little bit different. It seems that it falls more to gaming than it does, falls more to GPU wise than it does CPU wise. So, let's see. Uh-oh. Oh, I have to download the full resolution? Oh, you gotta be shitting me. I guess that's it. I guess that's all we're gonna get. I guess you have to download the full resolution in order to get the rest. You know what? I'll just hit it. Let's see, Corona 10 benchmark. And that's it. Oh, hold on, guys. Hold on. Sorry about that. Hand delivered lunch. Alrighty. Let's see. Okay, Corona 10 benchmark, 9800X3D. Looks like it's got a pretty good score, but the 14900K looks like it's above it. 285K is above it. I'm going to have to go backwards to see if I can get any more of these. I guess I just got to click on it. Looks like Adobe Photoshop looks like a pretty good one. Looks like it's got top score. Alright. There we go. Now we're moving. Okay. Let's see. Premiere Pro. Looks like the 14900K, 9950X, and the 285K is above it. Okay, first game. 1080p Epic. 9800X3D got 234 on the average. 1% got 206 compared to 7800X3D got 206 on the top average, and on the 1% looks like it's at 185. Looks like the 14900K is down here at 164, and then the 1% low is at 128. Now I'll tell you what, that 9800X3D is really, really up there. Look how small it, how small it is compared to, from your 1% low to your average, your average highs. Frame rate, this is your frame rates. It's really close. Looks like AMD really tightened it up. Wow. They really tightened it up. Yep. Because here's the 285K. And that's only 155 on its top, and it's 135 on the 1%. Wow. And now, when you're measuring, and I want to bring this up really quick. When you're measuring your CPU, and you want to find out what kind of power you're getting with your CPU. Yeah, if you want to find out what power you're getting from your CPU, run it 1080p. Run the lowest settings on your graphics card. And then, benchmark one of your games. And then you'll see what your CPU is doing. That's pretty much how I bench mine. Because you don't want you want your GPU to be the bottleneck. You don't want your CPU to be the bottleneck. You want your GPU to be the bottleneck. So, yep, But 7700X machine has got 155 on the top average, and 1% is 133. That's CPU. This is not GPU and CPU combination. This is more leaning towards the CPU. So if you're getting that kind of FPS on your CPU, I'm going to tell you, that's really good. Especially when the 285K, the brand new processor that came out for Intel, is right here. 155. The 7700X, 155. The 1% lows is 135. Now the 7700X is 133. So on the lows, you're only missing probably 1%. 1% on the 1% lows. Dude, you can't beat that with the stick. So that's what, a $500-600 processor compared to yours at what, $300? It's like you get the same speeds for half the price. So yeah, but the 7700X can do time traveling. Folks were able to buy it way earlier. Yeah, this is true. Starfield will be interesting. I am running Starfield at about 100 FPS at 1440p Ultra. Yeah, but when you run it at 1080p Ultra, you'll see a difference. And when you rebalance your resolution, then what you can do there is you can get one leg up. If you're looking for FPS, that's how I would get one leg up. I mean, yeah, just test it out, see what you can get, man. But like I said, you got the 285K just on Star Wars Jedi Survivor, breaking even with the 7700X. You can't beat that. That should give you a positive feeling. That should say, hell, if it's getting that good of, a breakage on the FPS, I mean, all you got to do is have everything put in the right places and you're off to the race. So, Last of Us Part 1. Look at it this way. The 7700X, I'm going to bring this up at its lows at 123 FPS. Look at the 9700X. The 1% lows are way lower. They're like 3 or 4% lower than the 7700X. But the 9700X is only 1 FPS faster. So, on an average, the 7700X is doing something. That's what I'm going to tell you. The 9800X 3D is blowing the 7800X 3D out of the water. It's got a high of a 208 FPS with 155 on the 1% lows, compared to the 7800X X3D that's 136 on the low and it's 197 on the top end. So Starfield is CPU demanding game. In the cities, I use 75% of the CPU and 99% of the GPU. That's about correct. And the 9700X uses less power, right? No, because it's an X version. It should be right around the same amount of power as the 7700X. Should be right around the same power. So Should be right around the same. Moving on. Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. Now remember, he's using a 4090 at 1080p high. Everybody would be like, why is he using a 4090 at 1080p high setting? Because that puts a GPU bottleneck and makes your CPU work 100%. So, but when you're playing games, unless it's CPU bound, you want your CPU to run less and you want your GPU to hit more. So, and the 9700X, yeah, well, we talked about that. But yeah, Cyberpunk 2077, I mean, if you look at it, the 7700X gets 166 FPS on the high and 123 on the 1%. Compared to the 7950 X3D, which is only getting a couple more FPS on the high and a couple more FPS on the low, which is not bad, which is showing faster than the 14900K. So, if you bought a 4090 for 1080p, then your GPU could last for a decade. More than a decade, bro. Like maybe 15 years. A decade and a half. If you're wondering. And you all know my screens are 1080p. How long do you think my RTX 4070 is going to last? You know it's going to last more than 5 years. Well, there's many reasons why that it's faster than that. One, it could be the architecture, which it looks like that with them running the right motherboard and the right amount of RAM will take and push the 7700X faster than a 14900K. Like I told you guys, it's how you set up your system. It's how you set up your motherboard. Your motherboard is the king. So if you got the right motherboard, it will become king. And knowing Hardware Unboxed, they're using at least a X670 motherboard. So they're using the top end of the motherboards. So, and they're using the top end of the amount of RAM they have. They're using 32 gigs of RAM, but it could be at 6400 microtransfers. The top end of the board. So if they're using all that with that processor, yeah, you'll get that kind of result. If not, then your processor runs slower, and then you won't see that kind of result. You'll get it within a ballpark if you use the right motherboard and the right system RAM. But if you don't, then you will not get what you expect. See, when everybody, and you got to understand, when you cheap out on your RAM, and you buy it in quantity and not quality, there's two sides of the fields. You can get what they call an A die and a B die. You can get A die, which would be a Hynix, or you can get a B die, and it would be a Samsung. Me, I run a B die Samsung. Mine's B die. I know, I already checked it out. All my RAM here is all B die. It's all Samsung. Now, if I was running A die, then, I would kind of run into a little bit of problem with that. That would be like buying G-Skill RAM, which is an A die, Usually, sometimes G-Skill is like Hynix. So, it all depends. Why do I run so much RAM? Why do I run medium size RAM like 3200 megahertz? Because I can go up to 3400 megahertz. It's right in the middle of 32 and 36. It's not pushing the RAM too hard. And it pushes the processor evenly with my graphics card. And they both don't overheat. That's good enough answer for me. I can play games, get a couple hundred FPS. I'm happy with it. I'm not like hardcore, the die kind of guy that just wants to, go in here and just bust it all out kind of thing and get 1,000 FPS. Not unless you got a system that cost you $2,500, $3,000 to get that kind of FPS. But you don't need that kind of system. When you're playing your games, as long as it doesn't stutter, as long as you don't have artifacting, and it plays nice and smooth and the graphics look great, you don't need anything else to play your games. Not unless the developers for the games decide to sneak something in on you. Then 9 out of 10 chances you gotta, bend a little to get to that point. So, but for it to be faster than the 14900K, yeah, man. I mean, it's gonna be. Because, truthfully, AMD has a better structure than the 14900K. Now, if he had an infected 14900K, then yeah, that could be a big scenario to where he lost, score because of a faulty 14900K. But I know he grades all his stuff and checks it all out before he puts up the benchmarks. So I know that he doesn't have a faulty 14900K. Not unless it is. It could be a possibility. But we all know how Microsoft Windows has been. If he's using the 24H2, that's a little bit different from Windows 23H2, Windows 11 23H2. It's a big difference. There's like a 7 or 8 FPS difference, or 7 or 8% difference between the 23H2 and the 24H2. Don't ask me why, I have no idea. And Windows 10 to Windows 11, from Windows 10, the most recent OS, to the 23H2, Windows 10 is a little bit faster than Windows 11 23H2. It's too bad Microsoft's going to be discontinuing Windows 10. But the good news for anybody that wants to stay on Windows 10, it'll cost you $30 a year through Microsoft for the next 3 years. You'll have to buy it $30 each year for the next 3 years in order to keep the program for 3 more years. And by then, you ain't going to want it. You're going to want Windows 12. If there is a Windows 12. We don't know yet. Windows is keeping hush-hush, or Microsoft's keeping hush-hush about it. Some people believe that Windows 10 was the last operating system that Microsoft was going to put together. Not true. They come out with Windows 11. Now they're saying it about Windows 11, which is 24H2 is the last version until they go up to the next new version. So it'll be Windows 12, it'll be 22H2, And then it'll be Windows 12 23H2 and then Windows 12 24H2. So all depends on if they're going to put out Windows in 2025, or they might not, and they might put it in 2026. I'm here in 2026. So, just to keep y'all updated with that, I don't see how they're going to keep 24H2 going for a whole year and 10 months. If they're going to keep Windows 11 24H2 going for a whole year and 10 months, that's going to be amazing. That'll be amazing. And they just do constant updates. They just update the program. So that's kind of the feeling I got. Or they could do in 2025 of October, they could turn around and say, okay, we're going to put out Windows 12. So all depends on which way you want to look at it. So let's move on. Hogwarts Legacy. Looks like the 9800X3D got 170 on it on the high, and it's got 111 on the 1% lows. Not too bad. Not too bad. And machine, just to let you know, it's got 124 on the high and it's got 74 on the low. Now, if I look for mine on this chart, they say it'll have 110 on the high and 68 on the low, but that's the 5800X3D. So pushing it down, that they'll say my CPU, the one I got, the 5700X, should be around 97 to 96 FPS on the high, and it should be around 47 to 48 on the low. That's what they're going to say. Yeah, I already know my numbers. But looking at the 285K, 7700X is still faster than the 285K. It's even faster than the 9950X on Hogwarts Legacy at 1080p high quality. Well, yeah, but the thing is this. You want to look at it in a different direction. You want to look at what's above it and what's below it. When it comes to the 7700X, you're right in the middle, man. Right here. You're right in the middle of all of it. I would say right down the middle. That's about really where you want to be anyway. Okay, having an overpriced CPU that you're only going to be using 30 to 50% of. But if you use more than that, and you use like 80 to 100% of it, then you might as well get another CPU that's more powerful. But if you're at the point where you're not using, you're using between 30 and 50%, then you're okay. CPUs are your computation part. Your GPU is your texture manipulation part. Goes from the CPU to the GPU, back and forth. So, as long as both your CPU and GPU is running in synchronization, that you're getting low latency. Trick, low latency. Measure your latency as you're tuning. See how, take one game that's CPU bound, and then tweak and tune to that game to get the lowest you can on the percentage used by your CPU, but getting 100% of your GPU and balance between the two. You'll run fine. The lower the latency, the less lag you have. Lag is bottlenecking. So if you're getting like 4% on your let's say you're getting 4 milliseconds on the game you're playing between 4 and 9 milliseconds. You're keeping it below 10 milliseconds on the latency, you're going to be fine. When you go over it, that's when your CPU and GPU is going to work a little bit harder. So, I guess if I'm doing as well as a 14900K, then it's a win. Yeah, it is. Pretty much that it is a win, dude. It is a win. Even if you're running a Zen 3 processor. Zen 3 all the way up. It's still a win. Some people can run a 5600X and it's a win. Just saying. ACC. Again, the 9800X3D, 269 FPS, 223 on the lows. And right here, you know, machine, you still got the 7700X that's right above the 285K. And that's the new processor, and that's the most expensive processor Nvidia, Intel put out. That's the most expensive processor they put out, the 285K. And your processor's still keeping up at half the price. So price to performance, you got one hell of a processor. And that's the way you look at it. So it is a big win. It's definitely a big win. I mean, it can't get any better than that. Well, yeah, it can, but you know what I mean. Let's see. Remnant 2, 9800X3D, 158 on the high, 122 on the low. Again, coming down here, 7700X. Still keeps above the 12900K. You're still fine. Still doing good. And it's breaking equal with the 7950X. Now, if we really want to look at it, bro, okay, we'll go to Amazon. I'm going to show you something. Amazon. Right? We'll pull up a 7950X. And now, let's do an Amazon again. Let's do a 7700X. Right here. $269.11 for a 7700X. Now, $486.97. So, if we wanted to do the math, and we do 486.97, and we minus that from the 269.11, you save $220.86. Right here. $220.86. Think about it. If you're saving that kind of money, and the processor, you're looking at the processor right here, that's a 16 core 32 thread, bro. 16 cores 32 thread. And yours is 8 cores 16 thread. This is more than a big win. I mean, you got a processor that you're breaking even with, okay, that right here, is running the same speed as yours. And you still saved $220.86 compared to the rest. You're still running faster than a 5800X3D. A 5800X3D that used to keep up with the 7800X3D. So it's a win-win. That would be used for a better MOBO or GPU. The money. I don't know. Truthfully, you have a bigger advantage than me. If I were to take the 7700X and strapped it to an X670 motherboard, tweaked it out, and strapped it with this RTX 4070, I'd probably get almost double the amount of power. I would definitely be GPU bound at max. The difference in the cost. Yeah, it is a big difference in the cost. It is a big difference in the cost, bro. Big difference. You're wondering about price to performance. Okay, you stack it up against the 7950X. Okay. Price to performance, you're getting double, you're saving half the cost. And getting almost that close to that double of the performance. So, I'm telling you, maybe the 7700X is going to be my new king. Who knows? Because I keep seeing the 7700X pop up so much. It's looking like it's going to be the king. As having a mid-level processor compared to a low-end processor and a mid-level, that's a good right in the middle mid-level processor. Moving on down the road. Homeworld 3. Wow, that's a big gap. 9800X3D's got 136 on the high and 63 on the low. That's a big gap. That means it's more GPU than CPU to me. If it was more CPU, it'd be the 1% lows would be way a lot higher. But I don't see it. Like here, the difference is your 7950X, 16 core 32 thread processor, and you got the 7700X, which is 1 FPS faster than the 7950X. You got to remember, you got 16 cores, 32 threads, and you got your processor that's 8 core and 16 threads, one half of it, and still running faster. Even if it's 1%, it's still running faster. So, but 9800X3D looks like it's king again. Plague Tale Requiem, let's see, 195 and 132. It's the 7800X3D looks like it's keeping up a little bit, but that's at ultra quality. So even at 195 for the processor and 132 on the lows, that's still not bad. And you got the 7700X that's now faster than the 9950X. Now, if you go to Amazon and you look at the 9950X, core 32 threads, $599. So keep that in mind, $599. And then you're running faster on the highs. You're running 4% faster than the 9950X with your 7700X. Wow. I mean, case in point, it's not, your processor is not that bad. Case in point. So, just keep it in mind. Keep it in mind. Moving on. Counter-Strike 2. 9800X3D got 668 FPS on the high side. On the low side, it got 362 FPS. Now, 7700X, 514 FPS on the high, and 258 FPS on the low. So if you do your math calculations, let's say, so you're looking at your 514, and you're minusing that from your 258. Jeez. Now the computer can't add. So 514 minus 258. So there's a spread of 256 FPS spread on your CPU. So keep 256 in your mind. Type it in, 256. Let's see. 668 minus 362. So there's a bigger FPS spread. You know, that looks like it's more bottlenecking. Because if I minus it from your 256, your CPU is less of a bottleneck than the 9800X3D. Wow. 50 FPS difference. So, price to performance, you still have price to performance right here. Yours is still a mid-level processor that does just as good. It keeps up with an 8-core 16-thread. Look, 7950X, 16-core 32 threads, 8-core 16 threads. That should convince you enough that you got a solid processor. Especially when you got less of a point FPS gap than you do the 9800X3D. Not a lot of people look at that. They don't look at the gap between the 1% lows and your total FPS, your total average FPS. They don't look at that. Because if you tighten it up even more, and that becomes tighter, that means you'll have less complications of slight flicker stutters. I call them flicker stutters, but whatever you want to call them. But, you know, the further you get away on your 1% lows, that millisecond starts to go up when it comes to your latency. But when you pull it tighter and you got less of a gap, then basically, you know, your latency should be real low the closer you get that gap. But I can tell you, the 7800, the 7700X, that's definitely a good process, mid-level processor, definitely. You could run it with pretty much any GPU you want, being mid-level. You should be able to run it with the 4090 with no problem. So, Starfield 9800 X3D, 140 on the high, 115 on the low. See, that's, I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about that. But 7700X, 112 FPS on the high, 92 on the low. And if I read your chat, you said 100 FPS at 1440p Ultra, 1080p Ultra. So, looking at this, brings you at about 100 FPS. So your motherboard is running correct, bro. Just to let you know. Because I know they're using a high-end motherboard for this. You're using an right down the middle motherboard for yours. And it's about correct. Yeah. I mean, you should be happy. I mean, you're not that far off. You're not that far off from having a high-end motherboard. Yeah. I mean, you're not that far off. I mean, just 12 FPS. That's not that far off. So you should be happy about that. Most definitely. So, Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine, 138 on the high for a 9800 X3D, 122 on the low. Still, you're right in that range. You're running neck and neck with the 285K. Still, you got a $600 processor compared to, what'd I say, $269.11 processor. So, running neck and neck with the 285K, you're doing well. So, hello, pseudoscientist. Good to see you. Good to see you. The 9700X is $20 more than the 7700X up here. So why wouldn't I just get the 9700X? I'm late, so haven't heard a word yet. Well, you could always go back to the beginning to now, bro. Just to let you know. 9700X is running 108 FPS. 7700X is running 109 FPS. So if we go backwards, the 7700X is running 112 FPS. This is all high side. 9700X is running 102 FPS. Let's go backwards, so you get a good projection why. See, right here, Counter-Strike 2. It depends on what game you play. 514, and then 9700X, 526. Every game is going to be different. Every game is going to be different. Hitman 3. Okay, we all know the 9800X 3D is going to be king. So that's going to be the king of it all. But it's $530 or maybe a little more now. But 9700X is 241 FPS compared to the 7700X is 246 FPS. There's not much difference between the two. So if you look at the price for the 9700X, okay, you got the 9700X at $327. You got the 7700X at $269. So, if you pull out your calculator, you do your calculations, do your 269.11, you minus it from the 9700X, which is 326.99. So you save $57.88 getting the 7700X. It's almost $60. If you're on a tight budget, okay, understand this. If you're on a tight budget, you're going to try to save money any way you can. Any way you can. So then, either way you look at it, it depends on what you can afford. Some people say, well, the 7700X looks good for me. And, you know, they'll roll with it. I mean, looking at majority of the games so far, majority of the games, it looks like that the 7700X is just beating the 9700X by a half a point. Almost to 1 point, about a half to 1 point. So, let's see, what else? Watchdog Legions. Okay, now the script is turned. Now there's only a 2% difference between the 9700X and the 7700X. So if you're using only 30% of your processor and you pay that extra $50 for that performance, do you really think you're getting it? No. Do you think it's really worth it? No. That's why I would get the 7700 over the 9700X. So, I will try to read Discord, my friend. I will try to read Discord. Give me a moment. Let's see. Discord. We're doing Discord. We're doing Discord. Pop that up. Yeah, I mean, but you're missing one thing when it comes to that machine. They've already upped the ante on the 9700X to 105 watts TDP. And they already went to the 142 on the 9700X. There's a bump. There is a bump on an upgraded motherboard that you can take it and do 105 on the baseline of the TDP and do 142 on the top end. Yeah. The 9700X and 9800X, you're able to bump it up to 142 on the TDP. So, It's like it's not new, bro. I'm just telling you what I know. They do have a little bit of a turbo kit, a turbo button that you can take it up that far. Well, hell, I can take my 5700X that's supposed to be at 65 watt TDP and take it up to a 105 watt TDP and take it to 142 on the top end. That's if you want to take and, have a bigger cooler to handle all the heat that's coming from it. That'll be up to you if you want to go that route. But me, I'm undervolting, so I don't have to worry about it. I go between 50 watts and 88 watts TDP. And I end it right there. Sitting idle, I was able to get my computer down to 6 watts. 6 watts on idle. I reconfigured everything, got it down to 6 watts idle. So, moving on, guys. Moving on. I'm just showing you what's going on. Let's see. Star Wars Outlaw. The game that I was telling you all that was kicking everybody in the shins. That game kicked everybody in the shins. Okay. 1080p. Ultra native. Nothing running. 9800X3D, 141 on the high and 109 on the low. That's a good spread. But 7800X3D just kicked the 9800X3D off the crown. It got 1 FPS on the high side and it got 2 FPS on the low side. More. 7800X3D. Still, to me, it's about the same. So they really didn't do much. Except for the 7950X3D came in the same. And the 14900K came in the same. They all came in the same. On the same average. 9800X3D, 7800X3D, 7950X3D, and the 14900K all came in on the same numbers. So, there's no kings here. And the 285K sits right down below it. And look at the 7700X and the 9950X. Boom. And look at the 9700X. Boom. Same. These three running the same. So, truthfully, yeah. Not so much. Just right here, from the 9800X3D all the way up to the 14900K, yeah. Yeah. They're GPU bottlenecked. So that's about all you're going to get. Just like the 285K, the 12900K, they're running the same. See, that's the thing. I don't know why Intel did this, but they're making everybody believe the 285K is a new architecture. Not when they're using the same I/O for the 12900K and the 285K. This is why everybody's bringing up the 12900K. Is because they both share the same I/O structure. The same input and output structure. So there's nothing new about the 285K that's worth the price of its existence. So, I don't want you all to get it wrong, but I'm gonna be honest with you. When it comes to a processor, I'm waiting for the Strix Halo processor. I'm waiting for that processor. The Strix Halo, I am waiting on that one. Because the iGPU is supposed to be as strong as the RTX 4070. So if the iGPU is strong as the RTX 4070, excuse me, I can't wait. So that means I wouldn't need a discrete graphics card at that point. If integrated graphics are getting that good, I would rather use system RAM than I would discrete graphics card. Less bottleneck, less programming. You guys don't realize there is way less programming. All the overclocking is done in the BIOS for your iGPU. You don't need any special programs. You can run it full nuts to the wall, like I do with this B450 motherboard. And I run it with the 5600G. I run it full tilt. It has, balls to the wall. And running 32 gigs of RAM, I can run 32 gigs or I can run 64 gigs. If I run 64 gigs, I can run 16 gigabytes of shared RAM with the integrated graphics. 16 gigs of shared, shared RAM compared to having 12 gigabytes of VRAM. I'll get 16 gigabytes of shared RAM. As long as it's fast enough, it'll run like you have a discrete graphics card in your PC. All depends on how you set it up. I've already accomplished this before. When I first started my channel, I was using that 5600G with that B450 motherboard. Believe it or not. And I was doing video editing, gaming, and everything off of that. That's when I first started the channel. Now I upgraded to the B550 motherboard to give it one more little push. Everybody says, well, I should have got an X570. No. Too many problems with X570. I like the B550 better. I like the B450. I like the B550. And I'm going to like the B650. And as soon as they come out with the B850, I like that too. Yes, I like the B motherboards. I don't like the X motherboards. They say I'm leaving 5 to 7% on the table using an X motherboard. Going from, using a B motherboard, they say I'm losing between 5 and 7% when I should be using an X motherboard. Hopefully I was clear on that. So I said, so what? I'll undervolt and I'll make up the difference by 3.5 to 4%. So I'm only losing out on 3%. But I can make the 3% up in the SSD drive and put higher speed. Or I can make it up there, about maybe 1% there. I can make up the other 1.5% in the SSD and upgrade the SSD to run at max tilt for the motherboard. Make it up there. You can make up little parts here and there. So, where you lack in speed on your hardware parts, you can make up the difference by putting more powerful parts in that slot and make it run faster. I like doing that. I like taking a decent motherboard with good overclocking, add some really, really good parts to it, spice it up in the BIOS, run it with a discrete graphics card, and you guys see me game. I don't have any problems gaming. No matter which way you guys want me to take and poke the screen, when it comes to the display settings, it's still going to run just as good no matter which way I poke the settings. Keep that in mind. Now, if I was using an older card, like a GTX 1650, I would have been kicking myself in the teeth. So, I see the difference between the GTX 1650 and the 4070. I see the difference between the two. So, hopefully you guys see the difference too. So, let's go ahead and move on down the road from this. And they say Cyberpunk 2077, the EPS measured watts. 9800X3D got 93 watts on it for the Cyberpunk 2077. But the 7700X got 83 watts TDP. So, looks like 7700X is saving in power again, just like the 5800X3D. There's only a 10%, 10 or 11% difference between my 5700X and that 5800X3D. I'll tell you why. My 5700X runs at 4.8 gigahertz. The 5800X 3D runs at 4.3 gigahertz. Mine runs a lot higher than this. So mine's more efficient than this. So mine's right in between here and here. So, especially. I'll prove it to you. Let's see. HW info. Let's see. Sensors only. HW info. So, right now, it's fluctuating between 3.7 gigahertz and 4.8 gigahertz. Not much of a fluctuation. So, and not much wattage too. It's not much wattage at all. And I'm only at, right here, 45C, guys. 45C, and I'm, streaming to YouTube. And all this going at the same time. It's not bad on the numbers. So, just keep that in mind too. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tabs open. I got antivirus running in the background. I got MSI Afterburner running in the background. And I got the system running in the background as well. OBS running in the background. All that put together, and I'm still between 44C and 47C. So, and that means I'm sitting right about here between the 7950X3D and the 7800X3D. I I ain't bottlenecked whatsoever. Nope. Moving on. Let's see. 7700X. Still not a bad processor. I don't see, but you guys get the idea. So let me go back to the main screen. I don't want to bore you all with everything that's going on there. But, okay. Now we're back on the main screen. Didn't want to bore you guys to death with that. You guys get the point about the 9800X3D, the 7700X. So you guys get pretty much the gist of it. Close it all up. There. Yay. I'm just closing down everything because I got like 40 or 50,000 tabs running at the same time. Okay. And also too, yeah. Okay. Now that I closed everything up, my conclusion on this, but also too, keep in mind, some rumors have been going around also too about the 50 series Nvidia graphics cards. Somebody said that Nvidia, it looks like some people were going through the patents the other day, and they seen a 5090 Ti, a 5090 Ti Super, or no, 5090 Super, 5090 Ti, 4080 Ti, and a 4080 Super, and a 4070 Ti, or 5070 Ti, and a 5070 Super that were in the works on top of the normal cards. So it looks like Nvidia might be putting out more than what we're thinking through the whole year of 2025. So, but the prices are not looking too promising right now. They're probably going to give you a base price on the 5060, 5070, 5080, and 5090. You're going to get a base price. Could go from the 5060 being $400, the 5060 Ti being $500, the 5070 could be $600, 5070 Super could be $700, and a 5070 Ti could be $800. Who knows? And and so on. You got a big wide gap. So I think they're going to do that this time. They're going to do it piece by piece. So if they do expect it not being a cheap price. Doesn't look like Nvidia is going to be doing any cheap prices. Just like AMD. None of their prices. I'm shocked that they ran these X3D processors up to the price that they did. I am shocked. But I'm sure that the 9800 X3D will come down in price when they come out with the next gen processor, the 10,000, AMD's 10,000 processor. I wonder how that's going to be. Is it going to be like a 10K processor? Who knows? But there are rumors about it, and people are talking about it. I think what AMD needs to do is they need to start off the low numbers and start filling in the blanks with the 7000 series, the 8000, and the 9000 series, and fill in the blanks of all of that and make a ton of money before they go to the 10,000 series. or the 10K series. Because like with Intel and what they did with the 285K, now let me tell you what I feel the 285K is. 12,800K. Gen 12, 800K. That's what I feel the 285K is. 12, 800K. That's what I feel it is. I don't know. Y'all can leave your comments. Let me know what you think. So, what are y'all thinking about that? Y'all think that I'm wrong about it, or? But if they're using the same standard I/O that the 12th gen Intel processors used, and they're using it with the 285K to save money. Now there is a report on this that they're using the same I/O die as previous generations to save money. I can't fathom this. I can't fathom the factor of them using the same I/O architecture that they've been using. Who knows? They could have been using them for 50 years. That's why the CPUs run so damn slow. I don't know what to think. So what I would you use Intel CPUs for over AMD? What would I use Intel CPUs over AMD? I wouldn't. Well, you could. You could. The only benefit that I see that Intel has over AMD, one little benefit, that's the integrated graphics. That little helper on the integrated graphics with Intel for content creating, that little extra boost that you can put with your discrete graphics card. That would be the little help that I see that would help your graphics card. But that's only for content creating. That's not for gaming. So as in a gamer's mind, Intel will get a better, like they said, Intel is more stable than AMD. They always said this for years. AMD's not stable and this and that. Until they got to the 13th and 14th gen. And then it looks like AMD became more stable than Intel. So. But understand. Intel is the CPUs are basically what you find in servers. A server style processor. That's the same mentality they've been using for over almost 50 years. The same mentality. As AMD used a different mentality because they build CPUs and GPUs. They used the GPU technology for, big servers and save some CPU technology for the gamers. Now, AMD has a decent CPU processor, but understand this. Nvidia is creating a whole new processor from scratch. And it's coming out the end of 2025. Close to the end of 2025. So I want to see what Nvidia has cooking. compared to the processors we've been on now. I want to see if Nvidia mastered the ARM processor architecture to make it 100 times faster than what it is now. And something tells me the way Nvidia creates these big motherboards or these big GPUs, that they definitely got something cooking in the background that's going to make our lives a lot easier. They can make one processor that would blow all the processors in the world out of the water. Now, if Nvidia does that, makes one processor that'll blow all the processors in the world out of the water, then that's what I want to see. And it's coming. It's coming. Nvidia is going to put their hat in the ring for CPUs in 2025. The end of it. Or maybe sooner. So we'll have 3 GPU makers. And if Nvidia soars even higher than AMD and Intel, it looks like we'll be losing one of the 2 companies, because they're not going to be able to compete with Nvidia. Right now, they have a hard time competing with Nvidia. That's the reason why they had to put together that task force of a bunch of different companies just to keep up with Nvidia. You got like 10, 12, 13 different companies all into one tent trying to keep up with Nvidia. One company. Wow. You guys don't really need to get out there and see what's cooking. And it's stroking out there. It's really getting, the market's going to get crazier. The insanity is going to get even bigger. When it comes to GPUs and CPUs, it's going to be something that we've never expected. You never know if Elon Musk ever put his hands on that deal with the CPUs for Nvidia. We don't know, because he did build the big Dojo CPU. We never know if he put his hands in there to build the next new ARM processor. We don't know. That would be sick. It is scary to think what Nvidia can do with all the resources it has and the endless money. Well, yeah. If they corner the CPU market, they corner the world. You don't realize this. Once they get the CPU market going, you know Asus and MSI, Gigabyte, NZXT, ASRock, and any CPU, any motherboard manufacturer are going to be all over this CPU. They're going to want first crack to make a motherboard for it. Guarantee it. You think that motherboard's going to be cheap? Hell no. Bet you the first one they build for Nvidia is going to cost over at least $1,000. But you can't sell it on the market like that. They know this. But if you're like got a lot of money in your pocket and you can afford it, you're going to buy it. That's what's going to be coming. And then they're going to be putting out the little tidbits for everybody else that, you know, that are going to be slower streaming motherboards. So that's what I'm waiting to see. I'm waiting to see how big this gets. I think that AMD will buy Intel. Yeah, I did hear about that too. But Qualcomm has first dibs on Intel. Intel's not selling right yet because Intel can't sell with that $8 million, that was it, $8 billion contract they got with the U.S. government. As long as they got that contract, they can't sell unless they cut an agreement with the U.S. government, and then they can sell. So, we don't know. But Intel did make that promise to the U.S. government. Government is involved. Hard to guess what will happen. Yeah, I do agree with that. It's gonna be a crapshoot all the way. It is gonna be a crapshoot all the way. So, as soon as Nvidia comes out with that new processor and it gets tested and everything else, the FTC is going to have their hands in it, and then the government's going to want to, upgrade their stuff to a secured processor, because that's what Nvidia is creating, a secured processor. Instead of having these processors that have so many security holes in them, it's like insanity. This is insanity with even the Microsoft Windows program having so many freaking security holes. And you know why they have these holes? It's because they create these holes. So that way they can say we're doing you a favor. So you can spend more money. It's a shell game. It's a money game. In order to get you to spend more money, they tell you need to do this. So if they say you need to get a new CPU, then some of these CPU vendors, they cut Microsoft a check just to have Microsoft update the software to where your old hardware won't run the new software. So they make money off of that. What they say, they make $163 million alone a year on these little incentives that Microsoft leaves with some of these traditional companies. So, government out, government in. So no matter which way you look at it, the government's always going to be there. But now they're going to be there till January the 20th, because we got a new sheriff in town. His name is Trump. And he's full gun. He's getting his cabinet together. He's getting ready to put his kitchen together. He's got something cooking. So, just for saying, no, I'm not doing politics right here on this channel. I'm just saying it seems like it's going to be coming this way soon. I hope they clear up this little thing with YouTube and all this censoring and all this copyright crap. Ugh. So, but anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I want to thank you all for being here and listening to me grumble a little bit and straighten around that little thing about how to upgrade your BIOS, and also too, little thing about the 9800X3D, the 285K, the 7800X3D, and all those good processors out there. You're welcome, machine, anytime, anytime. I'm going to go ahead and go, guys. So Y'all have a great day. Don't forget, next Saturday, noontime, Pacific Standard Time, right here on the channel. We're going to be doing it live every week. And if you're new to the channel, that's what we do every week. And on Friday of every week, we do graphics card nightmares, just to let you know. So, do stick around for that, and I will probably have videos popping in and out through the week. Depends on what comes up. So, now I have to go back and see what BS you were saying. Yeah, bro, you have to. You have to go back to the beginning and watch it all the way through again, just to see how much I embarrassed myself. You know how that goes. But anyway, guys, you all have a great day. Be safe. And if you're driving a car, pay attention to the road and not your telephone. A lot of people don't text and drive. Don't drink and drive. And if you got an old lady and she bothers you while you're driving, remember, just open up the door and kick her out the car. Don't do it. Don't do it. But it is a thought. Just kidding. I would never, ever do that to somebody. Not unless they pissed me off. But anyway, y'all have a great day. Oh, it's all good, pseudoscientists. It's all good. But, guys, we will see you on the next one. Be safe.